Perfect. Okay. Hey. Oh, arigato.
Arigato.
Okay, okay, great. Okay, just shake up a little bit. Up, down. Great, shaking out the arms anywhere you like, forward and backwards, left side a little bit. Just bring the heels back down. Just try and make the bounce a little bit bigger. Feel that you're sinking down the hips. Raising it through the body a little bit. A little bit more like a wave through the body than a shake. Like you're getting pulled by the top of the head all the way up out of the ground. Great. And we'll take a little bit of front to back. So imagine you're moving from the chest area. A little bit like being pulled forwards and back. Great. Just take it down a little bit deeper to the ground. Take it nice and slow. If you need, use that, or actually put the hands in the ground. There was a sense of a little bit transferring the weight into the hands, and then coming back. Obviously, you can't do it to the back, but working to the front, transferring a little bit of weight to the hands, and then back. Great. Okay, now keep the same movement. What I want you to feel, especially in the front direction, is feel that there's, as you go down, if you do this movement, if you do this without balance, you've got a sense that the ground's going this way, going away from the body. Imagine now as you do the movement, you keep the pathway to the ground. So feel that to draw the body back, you want to feel that you're kind of pressing down into the ground. A little bit like you would do a squat, kind of coming down and then pressing back up. Just play with it in this kind of position. And just feel the limit of that kind of connection. If the base goes so far, I've got to kind of step out to refine the base. So just play with it a little bit in terms of balance, leading the body out. If you take it too far, the step comes in and then you just bounce it back. But you're looking just to find the base, find that pathway, press the body back up. You can also do this a little bit to the back, a little bit more tricky. That's it. Very good. Oh, nice. Great, perfect. Great, and then just play a little bit, just with one leg forward. You don't have to be in hammy, be in any kind of position with the feet. But again, just feel that you're going to shift the weight over, and there's kind of a limit to it. So there's going to be a point where I need to step out of it. Just try and find that limit of the kind of flexion in the hip and the ankle, these kind of points. But the key thing is keeping that feeling of hold, finding the ground, just pressing back into the ground. You kind of recover the balance by using the ground. Just play with it a little bit. Most of the weight going to the front leg. Just play with each leg. Ooh. Sit, right. Sit. Right. Okay, perfect. Going back to kind of shoulder width, just starting, just loosen out the side of the body. Imagine a little bit more also kind of moving from the rib cage. Just kind of open this area out a little bit as well. So bring the hands into it, so you've got a bit more of a feeling of that line in the body, right out the side. Also feel free to explore this kind of direction as well. Just exploring that whole, the two side lines of the body. Right out. Just a little bit of mobility first. Right, so. Okay, perfect. Great, we'll work with a similar thing, kind of shifting the weight into the feet and just exploring the balance a little bit. So first play with this one a little bit wider with the leg and a little bit down, so a little bit like we're in a squatting position. And just play with here, just shifting the weight to the feet from foot to foot. And then think about fully transferring over to one leg. And then you want to feel that you're kind of floating this hip out of the ground. And doesn't need to be much, just a kind of couple of 10 centimeters or so. Just like raise it, sink into it, raise it. Just kind of floating the hip out of the ground. At the same time, draining down. Draining down. That's it. Good. Good. And first with this one, just keep the arms in this case kind of loose. And then kind of going to swing. Imagine that kind of movement you're doing with the Joe also, that kind of swing. This. And just imagine that as you swing over, the arms are also just going to kind of wait, like a kind of pendulum over. Pendulum over. just connecting the arms, but not necessarily with any kind of structure, just the feel that the arms are going to be included in the movement. Transfer the weight, sink it over. When you get kind of used to this, we get into it, just so that you can raise out the leg a little bit more. The key with this is when you go to raise the leg, the tendency is to try and raise it from the hip, from this hip. But again, think about that structure down into the ground, raise it, and think about just floating the hip out as much as you can. Floating it out. So not so much using the muscles, although they're involved, much more about finding that pathway, finding it, and then using that. So that's it, good. So great. Exactly, just like that, easy. Perfect. Very good. Okay, great. So you'll probably notice if you do this, you get the arm that's connecting out this side will feel like it's connecting into that foot. So just play now with this feeling as you go out. Again, don't worry so much about structure, just about getting this kind of feeling for it. Find the ground here on this side, and then think this kind of drawing you out this way. This is the same exercise as like this, like being pulled, but you want to feel now the connection across the body. And that kind of floating it out. It's kind of floating it out. It's kind of floating it out. Yeah. Yeah. Nice, very good. Great. Okay, now just play with the descent and bringing the foot back to the ground. So you've got the raise coming up, a little bit like a kind of sumo. Well, this usually comes from sumo, but you go bring now the foot down and think about dropping the weight into it. So it's not so much in this case about the kind of stomp with the foot. So you're going to again create that kind of hardness, reverberation through the body, which is nice, but play with this case the sense of dropping in and dropping the weight in. Raising it, dropping the weight in. It doesn't have to be so deep, it's just getting that feel for dropping the weight into it. Imagine that same kind of feeling you got with the sword cut. This kind of sense of dropping in. Dropping into. That's it. That's it. Oh. Nice. Great. There we go. Good. Nice. Great, perfect. Okay, we'll take a little bit of rotation, right? So again, just getting kind of hip width. Just feel it. The first thing is just really feel the hips are gonna rotate the body, so keeping the arms down. Not too big a rotation, you just want to feel the hips are starting to kind of drive it. Just letting the arms swing with it. Just increasing it a little bit. Great. Now just think about these two positions with the arms kind of wrapped into the body, and then without the sense that you're kind of throwing the arms out. Imagine they're kind of stuck with like Velcro, and you want to kind of rip the Velcro off the body, rip the arms away from the body, so that it's that movement from the hip which is going to free the arms. So you can think of them kind of as heavy or as a little bit kind of glued to the structure. You're getting that sense of the hip work. It's releasing. Set. Set. Good. Okay, just going to take the arms a little bit of a position now. So think about now the feet, the hips, raising the arms up to the back. So if you're kind of throwing something to the back, really like this kind of 𝒂𝒂𝒿 𝗏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒃 kind of popular movement. The sense again, start from that sense that you're really starting with the hips rather than the hands. And start to raise the shoulders up. But think about draining back down the shoulder. Find that rotation. Release them with the shoulder. Release them up. Good. Great. Okay, good. Just focus a little bit now. We're going to focus a little bit on the drop, but focus first on, I'm going to slightly separate the movement now. Think about your raising out of the ground. You're a little bit like a floating movement here with the arms. And then just play with kind of shifting the weight and pressing the arms back. So you're going to kind of open the hips out into that kind of, into a more of a handmade position. Again, start from this kind of position. Open it out. Find that kind of floating raise. Really like that kind of first 𝒂𝒂𝒏 kind of movement, that palms are raised up above the head. And then again, hips, raise it, open it out to the back a little bit. So you curl it, open it, raise the arms up, and then sink them in this way. Good. Great. Just play with one side like a 𝒂𝒂𝒏 exercise. You're not going to now bring the hand onto the hip, but you're going to have the same sense of connection from this hand to the hip. So you're in this kind of 𝒂𝒂𝒏 position. Think about now you're going to sink through that foot, find the razor, and then throw it out to the back, or don't throw it out to the back. Drop it down to the back. So you find the opposite hand to hip connection. Down, a little bit down, rolling up to the top, raising up to the top, and then sinking it down to the back this way. But just focusing really on one hand. Let the other arm either just follow or just kind of drop it to the side. So that's it, perfect. Nice, 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 good. That's it. Nice, nice, nice. Great. So we'll take into the full movement. So really including now the first part of the movement. So you've got the extension out into both hands. The key thing here is to think of sinking into it, finding the connection. And then now you've got the extra thing of rotating through it. So you're going to transfer the weight here and then spiral through it. Yeah, find this foot, and then you've got the same movement we've just done. So it's just like finding the connections into the hips. So that first one is just sinking in, dropping everything down, and then extending out to the back. Nice full extension. Yeah. And then roll it up down to the back. Yeah, and again, think about this in terms of sword work. Again, you can think about the structure we're always training is that sense of dropping the hips in. So that sense of the hips dropping in, but also true for the raise as well. So if you think about trying to raise the sword here, you can obviously do it just with the arms like this, the center hips stay really inactive. But the kind of easier way is to think about dropping down through the hips, dropping the hips, and then raising the arms up through that structure. So the hips constantly draining. So thinking in terms of this also, the big tendency here is to think about coming in first and getting to this kind of structure. Now, if I try and apply force here to this structure, it's already weakened. And then I got to do this kind of stuff with the arms. So think about the first, the kind of primary direction is like down, underneath, sink it down. This is exaggerated, you want to do this at the same time, but think about rolling underneath it. So if you've got a kind of structure that's here, you want to have a sense that you're rolling underneath it. And then from here, the structure underneath it here. So think first about dropping in underneath it. Get into the center line, roll into the back, and find it here. Yeah, there we go. Good. Just trying to make connections in with the, especially with the sword work. Yes, that's it. Exactly. Nice. Good. Okay, good. And then just think a little bit about the wrists and the kind of at the end. Think of them like the end of the wave, the end of the chain of movement. So what we do a lot of the time, this is why solo training is actually great for it, because if you think about someone when you usually train, you've got someone grabbing onto the wrist like this, the tendency in this case is to go into extension and block this whole joint system. So then you're really just expressing either the power of the bicep and the shoulder, this kind of thing, against this kind of, which can work if I'm really strong and I can get to these kind of strange positions. These kind of work, but in a way you want to think about the wrist like the chain of the movement, the end of the chain. So think of the wrist also as flexible in this kind of position. Again, it comes back to sword work. I can either block the wrist and use the shoulders and the elbows in this kind of way, or I can release the wrist and allow that to also be included in the movement. So just think about this, the two main positions are that beginning part, kind of dropping in to this kokyu. And then the second major one is this one. What we tend to do is block the arm and then do this, which again is fine, but think about this wrist also connecting into the hip. So it's going to kind of roll. You've got a kind of flamenco kind of movement. So the wrists are flexible. And again, you want these to be kind of expressing out the hip work and down as well in that position. Just think about every movement you're making. With the hip, you want it to travel all the way into the fingertips and out the fingertips. So nice. Okay, perfect. We will go to a little bit of talking. Great, perfect. Great. So we'll just work a little bit on the wrist as well. So first one, you take the wrist like this. It's like a biker grip. So you're going to grip nice and tight, but feel the wrist is also free to roll. So you're kind of squeezing, rolling. You just want to feel the elbows nice and loose as well. Shoulders are kind of coming into position. You want to, in this one, coming up too high with the shoulders. So think about, again, the shoulders kind of draining down. Again, a little bit like you're getting underneath the weapon. Underneath it. Just play first with the, it's kind of roll back. Good. So. Good. Right, and then just play with the roll down. Kind of rolling down, rolling down, up over the top. And especially with this one, just watch the shoulders. They're going to be mobilizing. You don't want them to start to squeeze at the top. So imagine the back of the body and dropping in. It's really like a kind of a 𝒂𝒄𝒄𝒿 position. So start to take it with the hips a little bit if you like. Just starting to play with, again, that feeling in the wrist that they're actually free to kind of express it rather than the feeling that kind of locking it. And then just pushing the arms through the space. Think about them kind of arcing into it. Into it a little bit. So, good. Yeah, great. And then just play with these two positions and play with each hand as well. So you can kind of do one, you can do the other, you can go down with it, you can raise up with it. Work with one side or work with both together. Work with the hips a little bit. So nice and heavy in the body, but also feel that joints are free to mobilize. That's it. Nice. Okay, good. And this time playing with more of a 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒄 open hand position. So again, keeping that feeling that the wrist is flexible and can kind of flex through the movements. And you've got kind of two movements. You've got the down and you've got the raise. So again, just think about this kind of in terms of sword work, the raise and the dropping curve. Raise and dropping curve. Fortunately, you can't do both sides of this one, but if you've got a resistance band, you can play with these also at both sides. This is easier to play with. Resistance bands are great for this kind of training. Next. Great. And again, start to bring the feet into it as well, and the hips. You just want them to really again express the hip work, the hand work. Nice. Good, nice. Yeah, okay. Yeah, great. Yeah, we'll take it to this. Some of you doing this going into this kind of 𝒖𝒂𝒄𝒄 position. This is a nice progression. So in the system, if you look at the Shomanuchi, 𝒖𝒂 to 𝒖𝒂 to 𝒖𝒂, this is a really nice progression in terms of wrist work and kind of dexterity in them as well. So we'll start with the 𝒖𝒂. So think about Shomanuchi. The first movement is you're going to raise in underneath, and this one's nice and easy, but you've still got mobility in the wrist. It's cutting across, and you're going to find yourself in the palm this way. This one coming in and then pressing it down, coming in this way. And again, just think about the wrist constantly being able to mobilize. So you don't want to kind of lock the wrist and just bring in the arms into it. So allow that kind of chain of movement to go right through the joint. So you got the raise, drop it in. That's it. Great. Okay, perfect. This is a little bit harder to do with the 𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒂𝒏. I use these kind of flexible pull wheels, things like this, resistance bands to kind of train these kind of movements. So think about with the 𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒂𝒏, or the original intention of the 𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒂𝒏 is actually to go into a position where you can snap the arm. So it's to get to a position I can press the hip in and then just snap it in this way. In order to do that, that means that the hands are actually working different directions, although they're working not opposing each other, but they're working by spreading. So then I get that position and then I just spread them a little bit further. And then I increase a little bit with the hip coming up into it. You pin the elbow. But that means that what you're not doing in a sense is just kind of dropping them in and pushing the arms kind of together. Think about the top of that movement. You come in. Think about those arms kind of spreading out away from each other. And then you get the effect of this. So it's like the elbows moving in, the arms moving in two directions a little bit. So it's like this spreading out. And then as you go over, maintain that sense as you go into the ground. So again, it's a little bit sense of an extra. This is like the inside spiral of the technique. You've got the big kind of spiral arc that goes through the movement in the body, but you want a little bit like you're corkscrewing into the joint itself. So that needs a slightly extra mobility in the wrist. So just play with that here. That sense of slightly spreading it out there. Spreading it out. And that goes all the way into the ground as you do it. It's a little bit harder with the 𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒂𝒏 because it's rigid. But work the same thing, that sense of spreading out into it. That's great. Nice. Yeah. That's it. Great, and we'll just look at the last second. So this kind of sumo squatting movement, so that's kind of a nice movement. So this kind of sinking down, getting the weight into one side and then pressing down as you bring the foot in. Think as you do that, it's a bit of an abstracted idea from that. So this, as you step in, you've got to transfer the weight in and at the same time drop the weight into it. So you've got to just think about that movement in the same kind of way. You've got this, transferring the weight in. What you don't want to do in this case is kind of push out of the foot and raise the weight up. This is where the technique gets lost. I just get kind of pulled out of it. So the weight down is really important as you transfer it across. This feeling in, and then this foot's just going to raise and then sink in, and then think about spreading right towards the ground with it. Yeah, in there, transfer the weight. Stay in. So. That's it. Okay, good. So we'll just play a little bit here with the cut. So just play with, just here anywhere you like. It can be like the first 𝒂𝒏𝒈. It'll be a nice and simple one. You just want to get the feeling from here, the sense of the cut down. The key thing for us to present is like the arc from the body and the dropping down of it. So if you think those are the key elements of the Aikido, you've got the arcing of the arms and you've got the weight dropping down into it. So just play with that here. Just we're trying to get the connection in from the sword work. Can be in any kind of position. Dropping the hip, arcing the sword. Dropping, arcing the sword. The key thing for us from the Aikido, what tends to happen is we tend to work in this kind of area with the arm. But think about really working with the whole body, the shoulders, the whole of the shoulder blade, becoming involved in it. Those kind of positions. We just play with going in and out of the cut and the Aikido. Ooh, no, that one, no. No. Yes. That's nice. Nice. Great. Okay, we'll take it into the Nikkyo. We'll stick with the about it for this because the Nikkyo is really tricky to do with an inflexible one. So again, going into the Shonuchi, one big change with this one now. You've got the raise up here, and then this hand's gonna cut out and then cut down first. So you've got the sense of working with this cut open, with the hand open, and then you've got this manipulation with the wrist. Drop it in, and then collect it underneath. And you're dropping into it, pressing through with it this way. Play with the block, and you've got the kind of fine side with the tip, and you've got the handle side, a bit thicker. So just play with which end you might feel more comfortable one than the other. You've got the raise, cut, find the wrist, wind it in, and press it in this way. So. That's yeah. Okay, good. Okay, yeah. Good. Yeah, playing with this, the kind of basic form, in a way later you can start to blend it together. The key point here is don't try and find the Nikkyo here in this kind of position, where the arm's kind of weak. This is going to, the person's going to kind of escape out of it. So when you do this one, the key thing is think about this. And then the first thing is drop it down. And then from this position, it's easier, much easier to find. So you think about controlling the elbow down. You've got this control on the elbow, and then this hand's free to move, manipulate, and come through this way. But first thing, think about dropping them down. You also want the person in this position, and then you can find the wrist. Much easier. Yeah, there we go. Bye-bye. Good. There we go. There we go. Good. Nice. Nice. This is a really great exercise for wrist. Great. And again, this is quite hard to kind of work with the bokken, but if you work with these kind of things, really, really nice. So think again about the kind of inside spiral. You're drawing the arm in this way, and then you want to capture the wrist, but in this case, you want to twist into it as well. So if you think about the classic Nikkyo of this one, you've got that same rotation happening with the body. The same thing here. You've got the arm, the elbow pin. This is taking and then rolling into it. You want to feel that you're basically coiling the arm up, and then you're going to press through it this way into the shoulder. So your aim in a way is to get the shoulder in a very weak position, and then push into it or press into it this way towards the ground. But yeah, you can do it with the bokken a little bit more tricky, but think about coiling into it, and then stepping through it this way. Yes. So that's it. Yeah, great. And that last move is like a kind of pushing a spear tip into the ground. Or more like a spade. It's more like a spade movement. This kind of feeling. Yeah. The next step, if you're feeling kind of comfortable with it, go into a feeling where you can cut down, find it, cut down, find it, cut down, find it, cut down, find it. The key with this one is, well, because we're tendency to grab it, is to, with the bokken, it's easy. The tendency is to try and grab the end, but think about cutting beyond it. So you're actually using that kind of position, and then you're right at the tip of it. The thumb's just going to collect into it. But just play with the timing of it. You can do it slow. So you're going to use that inside L of the finger and the forefinger and the thumb, the web of the thumb. Yes. That's nice, nice, nice. That's
Okay, thank you very much, Mike.
very good.
See you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, good. So we're really poor at doing two things at once. So what the tendency to do is like now I get that, and this arm's kind of dead. Nothing's really happening. This arm, and this does this. Think about now as you do it. You want really that sense that this arm's kind of driving down, controlling the elbow. So as you do it, think about this arm coming in, and as you find the grip, you want to feel that this is starting like the 𝒂𝒄𝒄𝒿, this kind of feeling. So as you find it, that pressure in this side is kind of constantly driving down. There. So you want to kind of slow pressure down into the ground on the arm. And if you're spiraling through, it's very hard to resist that. Until it's too late to trap the wrist. Yes, that's it. That's it. Great. Good. Yes, that's it. Great. Okay, so we'll complete the progression going from, you've got the 𝒂𝒄𝒄, the 𝒂𝒂𝒄, and now we're going to go into the 𝒂𝒂𝒄. This way. Tricky to do with the 𝒂𝒂𝒄, it's possible. What I want you to think about, we've obviously got the classic, or now the basic 𝒂𝒂𝒄, which is where you start in the 𝒂𝒄𝒄 first. Come through, find this position, find that. This is great, teaches a nice basic form. But if you look at the original Shomanuchi form, it comes up like this, and then I'm looking to capture the fingers directly this way and kind of get I want to get the hand here in this position straight away. So you're coming in and over, winding it, coming into it, and then finding the 𝒂𝒂𝒄. So with the bokken, just play with it. You've got the razor. You're going to cut it over, and then you've got that similar kind of manipulation for the 𝒂𝒄𝒄, but it's happening here, and then I'm winding into it, and then you're kind of stepping into it, finding the 𝒂𝒂𝒄 that way. So it's a little bit tricky, but again, good for wrist manipulation, for wrist mobility. You got this. Think about really rolling underneath it, That's it. Give it a try. So this is a tricky one to imagine. Yeah, that's it. Okay, good. Okay, good. The main thing to think about, why this progression is nicer than going into the basic one. Think about the 𝒂𝒄𝒄. You go from this position into the 𝒂𝒄𝒄 work in this position, into the 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒄 work in the fingers. So you got this to this to this. So what you want to think about with the 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒄 is you're going to get the fingers in this kind of direction, and then the 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒄 is straight on with the movement straight in. So the same with the bokken, we go from that position to now that position. I'm taking and imagine you're really taking the fingers of the person. You cut in underneath at that, and then the 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒄's here, boom, and then you're cutting right into it. Just play with that. Yeah, that's it. work. Let's see. Yeah, in this way, Adrian, you're looking for it's another position for it. So you've got you're looking for that shonen position this way, and then if you think about it, you want to get the fingers in this way. So you're looking to get that, and then straight away that, and then straight away that is coming on. So in this one, again, you're pinning the elbow at the same time, curling the fingers over, and you're in. It goes this way. So you want something like that position with the person taking the fingers. Yes.
Yes, I was trying to do it on myself, which was getting
tricky. Yeah, good. Yes. Yeah, another way it might be a little bit simple to think about. This comes up if you do Jiawasa with a kind of a Kyo Nikyo Sankyo set and using this kind of using this thing. Think about someone reaching towards you with the fingers like this. Your aim in this one is to just capture the fingers, press them down, and then roll them up into this direction. So your aim is as they come in, capture the tip of the fingers. Once you've got that, twist it up. So just imagine that the tip of the bokken is the same. So you want to kind of capture the fingers, capture the tip of it, and then you're twisting it inside. So you got a little bit of a down, a little bit of a roll through. And then from here, the arm just falls into the Sankyo position. Drop the body in, find it, and then come into it. But just imagine the kind of tip coming in, capture it down, and then you're rolling it inside, 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 fall into it here, there, there. It's actually a really easy technique. Yeah. Good. Yes. Yeah. Perfect. Great. Yeah, and then the last kind of step, we'll play with these another time before we finish. Just feel that you can play with it. So you've got the Ikkyo, the Nikyo, Sankyo, Ikkyo, Nikyo, Sankyo. And you just want to play with those as kind of rotations again. The key thing here, not so much about the technique, although that's interesting, it's about that manipulation in the wrist as well, and translating again that sword, the feeling in the sword work. And when we do all these kind of variations like slicing work, raising, cutting, all these kind of things, it's thinking about those kind of movements so that the wrist is free to kind of find those kind of movements. And that's where the training is useful for the Taijutsu. Just that's it, perfect. Great. Okay, we will stop there. We'll do that another time. Play with that a bit. Okay. Okay, so どうもありがとうございました。
どうもありがとうございました。
Great, thank you very much.